afternoon, everyone. Well, when the biggest story since the election broke, I was in a water park. My phone was locked in a safe, and I had no idea for a few hours that anything at all had happened. So yeah, I went away and I did my video yesterday morning, and it took forever on hotel Wi-Fi and all that other stuff. So not that I totally missed this story, but usually that's a big story in my opinion. So I would usually make a special video just to look at the resignation itself, and I'd have updates now, but we have to look at all of it because I was out with my family. So sorry about that, everyone. But here we go. Andrew Scheer resigns. I guess no one is really surprised by this. There's been a full-on coordinated campaign between Michelle Rempel going live on Facebook at the same time Andrew Scheer is, so that's disrespectful. Typically, people don't do that. To all the media reports that Scheer has had leadership rivals coming out of the woodwork, right? From Peter MacKay to anybody else who says maybe they're interested in leadership, right? It's been a full-on press. But since the election, he stated this is the first step. We're going to build on this. You know, we knocked the Trudeau Liberals down from their majority, and now we're going to build on that. And next time we're going to have a 10-year majority, just like Stephen Harper. And I couldn't find the video, and I didn't want to scrub through so much time because I wanted to get this video out to find the video where he says that. But he has been saying that. He has been talking about and comparing this election to Stephen Harper's getting going. But regardless, he's stepped down. But I wanted to go back in time. Here is October 22nd. This is Scheer and setting things up. It says Andrew Scheer falls short, but vows Conservatives will be ready next time. And I'm just going to share some choice pieces. It says, quote, "Tonight, Conservatives have put Justin Trudeau on notice. And Mr. Trudeau, when your government falls, Conservatives will be ready and we will win." Scheer failed to substantially bolster his party's standings in the House of Commons. The Conservatives returned to Parliament with roughly 20 more seats than former Prime Minister Stephen Harper won in 2015. So not a meaningful increase. Scheer said Monday's result is just the, quote, first step, and the popular vote success of the party in this election means the Conservatives are now the government in waiting. Well, hold on a second. Weren't you the government in waiting before? You were the opposition before. Just because Mr. Scheer hadn't guided them through an election doesn't mean that they weren't the government in waiting before. And they lost. And they lost with a Trudeau Liberal who was obstructing justice, who had blackface coming out at the same time as other scandals, who has groped a woman and then said she experienced it differently. Any of these things should have been easy to capitalize on. And a lot of people's frustration with Andrew Scheer is that he didn't explain anything well. Nothing. He didn't capitalize on any of the gaffes. He didn't even hold Justin Trudeau to account on India in an effective way. There were no really good sound bites. There were no really good takeaways. It wasn't really an easy scandal to communicate, except that it should have been. He invited a terrorist to dinner. Who does that? Right? Like it was too complicated and overthought. And Andrew Scheer just never capitalized on the seemingly constant foot-in-mouth disease that Mr. Trudeau has, right? Constantly putting his foot in his mouth. Back to the article. Of course, Scheer might resign before that leadership review. Oh, sorry. Scheer said Monday's result is just the first step, and the popular vote success of the party in this election means that the Conservatives are now the government in waiting. Right, I said that already. Of course, Scheer might resign before the leadership review vote is even necessary. And he did resign, and here we are. And here is him resigning in the House of Commons. I watched this speech until right here. See if you can tell why I turned it off. I'll explain why I turned it off in just a minute. Here we go.
And alongside my friends in the Conservative caucus, we've accomplished a lot on both the government and opposition side of the benches. And most importantly, we've kept our party united and strong.
Hear, hear.
Right, the long-standing ovation for keeping the party united when you kicked out the guy who you just narrowly beat out for leadership and then shredded those ballots, right? I mean, man, you kept that Conservative Party united by sticking to conservative values, or hiring somebody to smear the guy who left because you claiming that you left conservative conservatives and conservative values behind. And I agree with, obviously, Mr. Bernier, but I think that it's interesting that the caucus is standing up and clapping enthusiastically. Like, a lot of people, and as soon as I read the news, I knew that Mr. Bernier wasn't interested in the leadership of the party. The party itself is corrupt. And here's an example, because I tweeted about Doug Ford not being able to save the PC party in Ontario. As soon as he took over leadership, as soon as he won the leadership and won the election, and I mean, it all happened so fast. Like, it was a boomerang in 2018, right? It was so quick. He took leadership and nobody expected him to win leadership. And then when he won the leadership of the party, I don't think anybody expected him to win a big majority in Ontario, but he did. But he said, as soon as he took leadership, that he would be open to open sales of cannabis would be open to anyone, right? Like, you could open your own pot store or selling cannabis store, provided without any special kind of license or anything to that effect. And he walked that back within 24 hours. Like, as soon as he said it, it was like, nope, not going to happen. And Miss Wynne had a whole system of government-run stores, just like the LCBO, and Mr. Ford kiboshed that. That never happened. The lottery system never happened, clearly. And now we're on the other side of the lottery system, where they're back to opening it up to anybody who wants to meet certain standards can open up their store. All of that aside, fundamentally, the party itself is the problem, right? And sometimes you need to rebuild the party. And if the party is corrupt, if the party is kowtowing to Islamists, or if it's kowtowing to liberals or dairy cartels, and all of that seems to be true, or if it's just hiring people to seek and destroy through libel and fake news, I mean, that's just as big a problem as being corrupt to the core. Shouldn't Canadians make up their mind based on as real information as possible? I think so. I think that that's just responsible, but who knows? The Globe and Mail was reporting that Andrew Scheer resigns as it's revealed conservative donors paid for his children's private school tuition. That didn't seem to hold water, and the Globe and Mail comes out and says that the people who were supposed to know about it and okayed it, but the people who were doing the fundraising and the donors, meaning the Conservative Party members, wouldn't like it, and that he'd have to resign if it got out. So on one side, it seems weird that you'd have all the people who are supposed to sign off on something like that, like paying for your children's private school, signed off, but you also know at the same time, if it got out that that political funds, that donated funds, were paying for children's private school, the leader would have to resign. Well, it would seem putting somebody into a conflict of interest, right? Maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we shouldn't okay this. No, it'll never get out. Don't worry about it. I don't know. It just seems weird, right? It just seems strange. Okay, here's the Globe and Mail reporting quote. Andrew Scheer announced his resignation as Conservative Party leader on Thursday after a disappointing election loss that created internal divisions and revelations he is using party money to pay for his children's private school tuition. Remember the big standing ovation? He kept his party unified, right? Big smile. But internal divisions were sown, right? And half of the party was saying, get lost, Andrew, and going on Facebook at the same time as you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can have it one way or the other way, but you can't have a unified, strong Conservative Party when you're the leader who presided over the fracturing of the conservative right. Like, wow, it just doesn't work. Sorry, man, it's a fantasy. Print it if you want to, but it's fake. Back to the article. He will stay on until a replacement is chosen. Mr. Scheer revealed his decision 24 hours after the Globe and Mail contacted the party and his office seeking confirmation that the Conservative Fund is paying tuition fees for 4 of his 5 children to attend private Catholic schools. The leader's office and the party refused comment. Late on Wednesday, sources told the Globe that Mr. Scheer would have to resign once Conservatives became aware the party's fundraising arm was paying the fees. The Conservative Fund, which raises money for elections, does pay travel and general expenses of its leader, but usually not school fees. Former party leader Stephen Harper sent his children to public school, as does Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Sources say members of the board that oversee the Conservative Fund, including Mr. Harper and longtime party fundraiser Irving Gerstein, sorry if I've got that wrong, became aware aware of the school payments and were investigating when Mr. Scheer announced that he would step down. The fund would not have approved the money, sources said, and added that board members do not view that resignation as coincidental. The Globe is not identifying the sources because they were not authorized to speak publicly about internal party matters. Now, just be really aware of that. Like, this is an anonymous source, so they could be saying anything. I have no idea. I don't know. But I feel like it's worth noting and underlining. Back to the article. Dustin Van Voot, sorry if I've got that wrong, the party's executive director, said neither Mr. Scheer nor the party did anything wrong, saying the payments were, quote, normal practice for political parties, ... All proper procedures were followed and signed off on by the appropriate people. Shortly after Mr. Scheer was elected leader, we had a meeting where I made a standard offer to cover costs associated with moving his family from Regina to Ottawa. This includes a differential in schooling costs between Regina and Ottawa, Mr. Van Voot added. I scroll down a little bit. Quote, he called it one of the most, this is Andrew Scheer talking now, stepping down from, this is him stepping down in the House, and he says, quote, I just informed my colleagues in the Conservative caucus that I will resign as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I will be asking the Conservative Party National Council to organize the process of a leadership election, Mr. Scheer later told the House of Commons. As our party embarks on this exciting opportunity, electing a new leader in Canada's next Prime Minister, I intend to stay on as leader of the party and the official opposition. The party constitution gives the option of the caucus MPs and senators to decide whether he can remain. However, after an evening meeting, the Tory caucus affirmed that Mr. Scheer would stay on. Caucus chair Tom Kimmick, sorry if I got that wrong, would not say if the issue of the tuition fees was raised, citing caucus confidentiality. So yesterday, as this broke, the whole fees, the school fees was a really big deal, and then the party president put out, everything's above board. And I was surprised this morning when they were still going with it. So anyway, it doesn't matter. Back to the article. Mr. Scheer told the Commons the hectic pace of leading the party, especially during the election campaign, took a toll on his family, calling his wife Jill heroic. In order to chart the course ahead, this party needs a leader who can give 100% to this effort. So after a conversation with my kids, my loved ones, I felt it was time to put my family first, he said. Mr. Scheer urged party faithful to stay united and focus on winning the next election, something he realized he could not do after he failed to lead his party to victory in October. Although the Liberals were reduced to a minority and the Tories gained seats, party members expressed deep anger over the campaign. And here's Maxime Bernier on all of this. In a tweet, he encapsulates the whole thing. He says, being asked if I will run again for CPC leadership, zero chance. The party is morally and intellectually corrupt. Scheer was a weak leader who pushed it to the center. The next leader will do the same. I started a principled conservative alternative. I'm sticking to it. And here's an entire interview with Maxime Bernier. At a minute 20 seconds, they start talking about how, was it Maxime, or was it Andrew Scheer wasn't conservative enough, or he wasn't centrist enough? And basically that's what the Conservative caucus is saying. We need a leader like Trudeau. And Mr. Bernier says, well, it's basically if you do everything by committee vote, it doesn't work, right? It's not from the heart. You can't do by committee what has to be done by gut, what has to be done by your experience and your skill set and yourself, right? Like you can't lead by committee. It just doesn't work. So this is Mr. Bernier. The whole interview is worthwhile. The thing that strikes me is, again, I appreciate Mr. Bernier's consistency. He doesn't change his stories, right? He's asked in this, when you lost leadership to Mr. Scheer, were you upset or anything to that effect? And he says, I was relieved, which is the same story he's told before, right? He said, I was relieved because I didn't have the support of the full caucus. I was going to be introducing massive reforms. So yeah, here we are. But I find it interesting, right? Everybody said Mr. Scheer, or all across social media, everybody agreed Mr. Scheer was a weak leader, but the split between Mr. Bernier and Mr. Scheer was Andrew Scheer can beat Justin Trudeau and Bernier can't. And looks like neither one could, right? So who knows? And maybe if Mr. Bernier was the leader of the Conservative Party, maybe this would have been a big watershed election and it would have been a big united mushy middle who was looking for a bold new direction for Canada, a bold direction away from the United Nations, a bold direction to chart our own course and maintain our sovereignty, to maintain our tight trade relations with our closest current trading partner, the United States, right? I mean, who knows? Who knows what would have happened? But now we can see with clarity that Scheer never really wanted it. And Mr. Trudeau's got, well, at least another little while to govern Canada and do with it as he sees fit. And that's closer ties to the United Nations. That's pursuing United Nations Security Council seats. That's making sure that the borders stay open and immigration levels continue to rise and money is spent on third world countries instead of on Canadians at home, and increase in deficits. That's what people voted for. And I don't think that anybody cares. And like, I think that people are quite happy that they voted for that. So, I mean, color me confused. Anyway, I think this is big news. I think this is interesting. And I'm very, very glad that Mr. Bernier is sticking to his guns. Because, yeah, I think that the Conservative Party is beyond repair. Really, unless a leader comes in and sweeps the whole bureaucracy clean. And I mean, okay, good luck. They're going to paint you with a racist brush. Spoiler alert. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful day. I'll be back tomorrow.